Hello and welcome back to Cup of Confidence. Cup of Confidence, the place to be. Now, today we've got someone very special. And I say, oh, they're so special, but each individual has their quality. I met this gentleman a very long time ago, many years ago. We built this relationship, because it's just the connection, the dinners you had. But today I'm not going to spend too much time on the introduction because I want to dive straight in. He's very interesting, has done many things, and honestly, at this present moment, I just got hold of him. He's busy right now. So let's just grab him and make sure we get straight into it. So, welcome, Anthony Mason.
Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Anthony. I'm very well. You know what? I'm feeling all the better for actually catching up with you and giving us your time at this present moment. So that's making me feel real good at the moment, So welcome to Cup of Confidence. How are you?
I'm very well. I have this saying that I'm very pleased that I'm on the right side of the soil to be able to give God thanks and praise to be here. So that's me. I'm very grateful. A spirit of gratitude. So yeah. I think that encapsulates where I'm at the present.
Amen. That's that's so great. It's so great to hear that. Interview many people, but that's so great to hear you say that. Now, listen, on Cup of Confidence, this is all about different areas of confidence, how we develop, and our guests always tell their stories about themselves, their journey, and very honest about who they are and where they're from. But before we even get started, I'm going to ask you a question. Have you got a cup with you?
I have.
Oh, wow. Let's have a look at your cup.
There it is.
Yeah. Cheers. The original Cup of Confidence cup. You've got something written on your cup there. I'd like to know what that is.
It's a scripture. My wife decided to treat me to a cup. I've had a couple of them and unfortunately broken one. And she'd noticed that I'd broken it, and so she decided to replace it. And the cup essentially has two scriptures. I think it has one, First Chronicles, "O Lord, that you bless me indeed, and enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me, that you'll keep me from evil, that I will not cause pain." And the other one is in Psalms 1, verse 3, "To be like the tree planted beside the water, that shall produce fruit in its season, whose leaves shall not wither." So every time I have a hot drink, and sometimes when I sit and contemplating or meditating at certain times, I look at the scripture and it just reminds me of the goodness of God and what God has been doing in my life and my reliance upon Him. So yeah, this is my cup that I am fond of and appreciative in terms of what my wife has taken out time to actually get me as a present.
Wow. Man of faith. I like that. Tell me this. You just said, planted by rivers of water. What's that mean to you?
It means to be on the endless supply in terms of once I am connected with God and His Spirit, essentially what it does is that knowing that when you are at a place, position, that you have direct access, that being an evergreen tree survives in no matter what season that it goes through. And so that means to me that as long as I'm connected to the source and my roots are deep within a good foundation, that I'm always consistently got access to the strength of where the living water, being the Holy Spirit, enables me to go through seasons and stand in seasons. So yeah, that means just a continuous supply of access to the Father for His wisdom, His guidance, His strength, and all that's needed to get through life.
Amen to that. Now, let's kind of do a little recap on that, because I believe you are planted by the river, because we've taken a long journey. You've been a long way. We've always been in touch in one time and have little gaps in between. Let me just explain something, you who are watching and new listeners as well. I met Anthony many years back at the beginning of everything that I do. And we met at this event, and there was something that stood out about him. He spoke. And I remember this distinctly because sometimes you swap numbers with people and you just go away and this, that, and the other, and you You might meet someone along the way again. But I remembered not having this catalogue. I'm not going to name the speaker at the time, right? Because you turn around and get in touch with that. You say, "What do you give them that?" She'd break. And what happened was, I didn't have it at the time. And, really didn't afford it at the time. I didn't say that. But, and I remember we connected on the phone and was telling about this. And at the time, he told me, "I'll send you this." But, sometimes meet me, I'll send you this. And he did. He kept to his word. He sent me the whole catalogue. And I remember it distinctly. And I said, "This guy's he's a man of his word." And that was way back then. Do you remember that?
I don't even, to be honest, to remember that far back in that sense. And in just in life, to be honest, and it's not just an amnesia thing, it's just there are certain times that you do things that you just do it because of the willingness of doing it, and you don't catalog it in your mind. So when you're not the first that says, "Do you remember when you did this?" Or "Do you remember when you said that?" Or "Do you remember when you said this?" And it's just not a disrespect. It's just a case that I don't remember, but it's quite clear that it made an impact with you. But on reciprocally, it's happened to me when I've spoken to people and says, "Do you remember when you did this?" And they've not remembered. So yeah, so please forgive me for the absence of mine in that sense, but it's quite clear that it made an impact in your life. And I give God thanks for that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And you know what they're saying? This guy's humble. He's not thinking, "Oh, look at my right hand, what my left hand's doing." He just does it and it happens, So tell us a little bit more about you. Obviously, our journey is about confidence, and we know you're doing great things right now. You're helping many other people. But tell us a little bit about yourself in the earlier days and where you felt you didn't have that confidence, where you grew, what it was called. Tell us about it.
So I'm a product of the growing in an area called well, I wasn't growing in Moss Side, but the surrounding areas of Moss Side, Manchester. This is when Manchester was under the onslaught of many deaths, needless deaths, I mean, say, between gang rivalry. And in saying that, there was a time whereby I was affiliated in one sense of knowing different gang members from different sides of different fractions. And you could see the needless that were happening. And this was a major cry out for the city because of the small demographics, as it were, in terms of Manchester compared to many other areas. It's very close-knit community. So you were seeing people that were involved in all of this tragedy, as it were, and a lot of them were connected relationship-wise in the sense of family members, because a lot of them never really asked the questions as to who is who and such forth, and it was all over stupidity. So that point caused me to start to look at and seeing that, there was more to our community, and a lot of it was black and black crime. And this then caused me to start to look at certain things, and I started to look in terms of, well, we had repeat offenders that will go into prisons, come out of prisons and go back into that same lifestyle. So I took a step to look at going into the prison industry, as it were, whereby I was a key holder for 2 prisons, and I supported chaplains and went and reasoned with young men and spoke with them about their lifestyles and such forth for a number of years. In fact, it was about 14 years I was doing that for. I also, myself, I'm living with a condition and affected by a condition called sickle cell. So that prompted me to actually look at what we could do in terms of not just complaining about a system, but starting to impact and empower lives of those that are living with the condition. And also, I, in 2011, became an ordained minister, and that came under that aspects. In fact, to be honest, I ran from this like a Jonah. I ran from this from 3 different ministries, 3 different pastors, unrelated, had asked me to be part of their leadership and pastoral team, and I was saying, no, that's not for me. That's not for me. And it came to the 3rd church. Not that I was church hopping, but there was just different ministries that I was involved with. And I said to myself, you know what? God must be trying to show me something. 3 different ministers, unrelated, asking me to step into this particular role, and I did so. So again, I'm a person that was born in the UK, living with sickle cell, saw there was a just cause for us to ramp up the insight of understanding the condition, although it's the most readily inherited blood disorder in the UK and in the world as a hemoglobinopathy. And I recognized that we needed more help in the community. So we started a support group in 2011. And in 2015, we became an official charity. And, rest is history. In fact, this year, 21st of June, we celebrate a 10-year aspect of being a charity. So we're having a function to celebrate that. But again, quite diverse in different areas in terms of, it was always about help, always about empowering, always about seeing beyond my own personal needs and wanting to help others, but also in helping others, I found that I was being helped physically in one sense in terms of support, in building a team, but also spiritually and mentally, because it caused me to recognize that even when you think, let me stop here. You see this cup? Some people talk about, a cup being half empty or half full. I am a person that looks at a cup as having a cup in the first place, because sometimes it will be half empty and sometimes it will be half full. So I'm just glad that I've got a glass or a cup to be working with. And I think that's my motto in terms of life, is that if we can be at some there available, I think that helps me through life.
Right. That's really interesting. You gave us quite a lot there in that sense, to the point of where you are. So I'm going to jump back and break this in. You said about growing up in Mossad, right, and the gangs lot. Where were you with that in your confidence level and the threats of life and everything like that? Where were you then?
At the time, as a person, my confidence level was very challenged because there were people that were close to me that passed. So confidence in the community wasn't very high. You would leave your home and you'd wonder whether or not, because these were not just incidents that were in designated areas, it was quite wild, like a Wild West. So leaving from your home, traveling, doing your business and coming home was considered a blessing. So your confidence level in terms of just the survival and being of a certain age, because it was my age category of individuals when these gangs first started. So they were...
How old were you?
So I'm reflecting. Roughly early 20s.
Early 20s. So you young men out there in your 20s who's going through this, pay close attention to what we say. Okay, so sorry, carry on with that.
Yeah, so I was recognizing that the system that was set was people fighting and people getting themselves into issues around things that really didn't have much longevity in. They would, and where I really noticed that, and I have to skip forward slightly, is that when I was going into the prisons and I was doing the ministerial work, you're finding a lot of these men, these young men, were crippled in their mindset because people who they affiliated with, people who they thought were supportive, they didn't get money sent in, they didn't get visits. So all that they were doing in terms of this gang and this affiliation aspect really wasn't paying off. And then I looked at the aspect of, as a father, as to whether I was playing my role as a father. Why were these young men going astray? Why were these men affiliating with gangs? So therefore I started to look at myself and says, reflectively, is there anything that I could do or should be doing to help to change that culture? So my confidence in myself as an individual was waned because my son himself had gone through incarceration. And I knew quite a lot of individuals parents who, by standards set, you'd believe that their households were a safe place, but yet the gangs and the street gangs and all the music and everything else that was around it seemed to draw them in. So my confidence level as an individual felt, was I responsible? Was there more that I could do? The other aspect is that there were a lot of young men around me who they themselves were driven around the money and the lifestyle, the fast cars, the aspects of garments and such forth, which again, you know, respectively, I look back in hindsight and say, was it all worth it? Because being a minister now, I've never laid anyone to rest with big cars, big jewelry, a wardrobe full of
Wow.
clothes, and all of those things that people are aspiring to. Now, that caused me to really think. It really caused me to
In,
think and take a stock.
you know, you just said something which is really, it's really important, which is that being a minister and doing funerals, you didn't lay anybody to rest with those big cars, those chains, and all these things. Why would you think there's such a desire to show off these things? Why would you think a young person would want to show off this sort of luxurious life? Why would you think so?
A lot of
Just
it's
a
down
minute.
to, I think it's media. That doesn't help
Mm-hmm.
because we get a lot of
I
what
agree.
comes over from America and people buy into that lifestyle. And a lot of
Well,
it's hyped. It's not necessarily what you see on the screen. Um, Peer pressure, um, and also just the lack of real ethical mindset in terms of work and knowing about seasons, reaping what you've sown over a period of time. The mindset has been very instantaneous, a microwave mindset, I call it. Everybody wants everything very quickly, don't want to work for it. They don't come from a mindset of being industrious, whereby you had the bills that for Windrush and such forth. If you speak to them about their stories, they walked in fog for many miles. They were rejected,
yeah.
yet they had a tenacity to make better. Whereas, this lifestyle was instantaneous, fast money, easy come, easy go. But my key thing was how the money was made. It was built on the shoulders of those that suffered, in a sense whereby many became drug addicts. Many lived on
Right.
the effects of the drink to be able to, when they was involved in certain criminal activities, that they couldn't sleep. Their mental health was dramatically affected. Many came out, and some of them felt better being inside of the prison system rather than being outside because they could manage community. So all of this became a real challenge for me to see. And again, we felt, many of us felt in my age category that we failed our own children and our own peers and our own community.
Right. Right. Well, listen, Anthony, I was going to ask you a question not far from there, because I was just going from what you explained in the beginning. Now, you obviously said, yeah, the situation with your own son, the community you grew up in, but for some reason or other, and I'll say God had his hand in you through all that to use you for what you're going through. So you've come through all that, and you just mentioned a while ago about your own condition. Right? You mentioned about sickle cell. Tell us about it, if you might.
Yeah, so I'm British born, now 55 years of age, and born in the UK, my parents coming from the Caribbean.
Right.
My parents were told that my condition was down to incest, which was totally far removed from the truth. When I was born, I was in an incubator. They said that I wouldn't live beyond a certain period of time, and we're talking incubator stage, so we're talking a matter of months. I was then told that at the age of 16, 17, that I wouldn't live beyond a certain age. 25, I would live beyond a certain age. So going back into those,
Just stop here. Did you know that at the time? Did they
yes,
tell you directly when you were 17?
I knew that. My parents knew that, were told, and I knew that because the doctors told me directly at the age
Right.
of
Okay.
17 that,
Wow.
because of the condition and the complexities of the condition and the aspects of the condition that's really not understood, that they didn't believe I was going to live beyond certain ages. So that was something that I was living with, and in one sense, I then lived in a fast lane because I didn't think that I was going to live beyond a certain age. So therefore, I thought, let me try and pack it all in, as it were, in this short time frame. So living with a condition and it being poorly understood in the schools, in the community, and And in my own family, I'm the only one. When I say family, the nuclear family is not that large, but the extended family is large. And me being the only one that has actually living with the condition, it was very perplexing, very challenging, and very confusing. I really couldn't work out certain times, pain scales and understanding. I'd lost my legs at certain times in terms of use of my legs, going for blood transfusions, regular checkups, not being able to understand when pain onsets came in, being different in school, having to be catered for in one sense because they didn't know what they were catering for. So I had to really speak out when I was having some of the challenges. And again, it affected my learning because, again, me not being able to be in school at certain times and there not being anything put into place to actually support or supplement, it affected my learning again. So there was many challenges, both on the medical field and in the arena of the community, and also self-awareness.
You just explained quite a lot within that, and it does make you wonder, why is there not awareness? You just drew something which, while you say that, reminded me. I was coaching online, and there was a young gentleman, a young black gentleman as well, and we were speaking. He suffered from Sickle Cell, and he had a few crises, and this is out of London. And it was quite raw. It was, but when he went to hospital, they didn't know how to actually, administer anything to him exactly. So it took for quite a while that they had to phone into London to get his notes right. But while saying that, he was talking to me and telling me about the frustrations of being out there studying and nobody understanding his condition. They made allowance for in his studying, but nobody understood even the hospitals up there. And he found that quite frustrating. What would you say on something like that as well, in the awareness of sickle cell?
It's interesting that you say that, because even the medical professionals themselves are not necessarily given any length of modules to understand the condition, which is very poor, and it's something that we're challenging as an organisation and as a collective. So that's major. You go into hospital and you're expecting your medical professional to know more than you about your condition, and so therefore that's a massive frustration. And you go in and you're perplexed, knowing that you have the condition, knowing that, for example, if you get lack of oxygen around the body, which can affect any part, so you can have something called hypoxia, which is lack of oxygen to the brain, so your natural or your normal behavior would be affected. So going to hospital and being asked a deluge of questions about your condition and you're in pain and crisis, proves to be very frustrating. And we're still experiencing that now to a certain degree. So a lot of it's down to the government taking on board that they themselves are not equipped, even in this day and age. And there's not enough medication or treatments that is curative for the condition. There's treatment to try and offset pain and try and reduce the amount of frequency of crisis, but there's no cure as such. In a large perspective, there are ad hoc or very seldom, I should say, cures that have actually been noticed and recognized. The major one being at the moment is bone marrow. They've recently looked at gene editing, but again, this is something on the recent spectrum. So to answer your question, really, it's about continuous education. And I'll ask you a question. How many billboards do you think you've passed on the way to your home or to the way shopping and such for? And I'd suggest to you that you passed a numbers of billboards, but you didn't necessarily notice that it was there until an appointed time. And then you didn't realize it was there for months. So what I'm saying is that sometimes this thing has to be repeatedly brought into the public arena under scrutiny, and call it as it is. It's the most commonly inherited blood disorder, but it predominantly affects the Black community, although it's not indigenous to the Black community. So again, there's some question marks around that in terms of the funding and support around sickle cell as it is. So these are some of the realities that we're facing, that we as a community don't have to sit and complain, but let's be active. That's why we started a support group. Let's challenge the system in the right way, with diplomacy, with integrity, and the systems around us also be transparent in terms of how they're not
Yeah.
addressing particular areas as well.
Right, right. You know, you used the word "you" when you said that, like how many billboards do you see and everything, and that triggered me because you don't. And why I could say that is because I've had family members who has the traits as well. Remember particularly one billboard, a really large one, that had about 6 or 7 put up. But it was the church that let's say, seminar on it, and they had speakers come down, and they used that fund as well to actually put up billboards around. And I thought about that. That was the only real time that I've seen big billboard with awareness of sickle cell, you know. And at the same time, it makes you wonder as well, because there are many different areas as well in the medical field where, let's say, where the funding goes, where it promotes and where it's not promoted at the same time, but each individual is crying out for their part as well. I know it sounds like a question going round again. It's like, well, why not? You know, why not? And what we could actually do about it. Now, some weeks ago, we were trying to get this together and wanted to raise the whole idea. You did an event around sickle cell, didn't you? All right. I was hoping that we could have got it in time to actually promote it at the time as well. But tell me about it. How did that go as well?
So there's been a few events we've done. I was down actually in London at a meeting, a HPCC meeting, which was speaking about rare anemias and blood conditions. And that in itself went extremely well, in the sense whereby it was run by an organization called Sanius. And Sanius, the CEO of Sanius, Orlando, he's actually living with the condition, and he's been put in a position where he's able to put this condition in a higher standing, which it would have normally been. So that what he did was really, really good. It was well attended. I think it's called the Queen Elizabeth Centre, just across from Westminster.
Okay.
There's where it was. So it was well funded, well prepared. It had a lot of delegates on the national basis and even on the international. So that helped in terms of sickle cell. But what's happening is that what we're trying to do is, for example, a couple of years ago, we had the town hall in Manchester lit up in red on Sickle Cell Awareness Day, which is 19th of June. And what we're hoping is that eventually is that every city does the same. And that's an awareness aspect, that people who may or may not be affected by the condition will be aware of the condition. I'll give you an example. Somebody working in housing and somebody applies for a premises that's living with sickle cell, and they keep refusing particular properties for various reasons, and they get struck off the list. So one, they may be given a house or flat that's above the 3rd floor. And if you're not knowing that, because somebody lives with sickle cell, if the ambulance was to come, they'd need access. Therefore, that's why they refuse that property. Also, a lot of these properties now are built with blow air heaters as opposed to radiators. That blow air heater blowing out economy 7, as it were, at night, that warm air is quite drying for somebody living with sickle cell. Now, you're not living with sickle cell as a housing attendant or association lead, but something like that would affect how you treat somebody that's living with sickle cell and taking on some of the complexities or the issues that they face. So I just give that as an example to say that even though you may not be affected, but you could affect the way somebody is living with this condition and how you could help to have empathy and sympathy around their condition. You just treat them as somebody who's just been directly difficult, not accepting a property.
I never thought about the heat and the dry air, right? And so even if I'm saying it right now, could you imagine the many others who are not aware of certain parts of what we do, but it just makes you think, well, we are aware. Are other people aware as well? So how do we actually make people aware? How do we go about it? What would you like to see done?
What I'd like to see done is people take a bit more vested interest from the school level. I think start at grassroots. Let's go back to the roots aspect. What I'm saying is that as young as possible, if we can educate our community, and start to spread the information. Also, for people to be tested, which can be free. The testing is free in the UK. Go to your GP or the Sickle Cell and Thalassemia Centre and state, for example, we have people that come from Greece, Italy.
Yeah.
They affected by sickle cell. A lot of people don't realize that. So if you come across, so again, it's not the stereotypical always a black man coming from Africa. Yes, West Africa has a highest population of carriers and those affected, but it's not only those individuals and that nation group. So I think education from as early as possible, being tested to know your status, which then that's very key because you can't judge on the outside what your blood's saying on the inside. So it's interesting that we know of individuals that are blonde-haired, blue-eyed, who actually have the full-blown. And they say, "Oh, did that happen?" Well, let's look at the fact that slavery is not that distant in the sense it's not thousands and thousands of years in terms of, so we have the slavery aspect whereby you had the house slave and you had the field slave. And so therefore really know what happened as being a house slave, whereby you had mixed heritage children and therefore blood. So these are facts have to be faced. We can't just eradicate that from history. So therefore it can run through your bloodline. So, these are realities in terms of being educated, I think, starting as early as possible. And when individuals are in social media, just, look into certain podcasts, listen to certain podcasts, and just educate yourself to learn a little bit more about it. Because again, as I said, you may not be directly affected, but vicariously through the work that you do or how you are in a community could make the big difference. And also, what I would also totally suggest and encourage our community to do is to give blood. And we know that those that are living with sickle, they are in great requirement of blood donation. But it's not only that. We have, God forbid, somebody crossing the road and they're in the accident and they go into operation and they're able to be rectified or helped or patched up, for one of a better term, in the hospital, but then they may need blood. And we found people that have not had the right matching of blood, that we've lost them, not because of the injury or not because of the tragedy of the circumstance, but because of the lack of blood match. So woe is me. We have to be proactive, and those are ways to be proactive.
That's some good advice. And I'll say to everybody, you listeners out here and viewers, try and open up your mind and just challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to go and research and find out a lot more about the condition of sickle cell as well. I mean, you can drop us a line, forward on to Anthony. I'm sure he's got more information as well. Just think, and if you just want to have some dialogue and say, listen, this is what I've learned, tell us more, pass on the information. Thank you for that. Thank you. So, we held back on some of the areas, not whereas near full, but you're the CEO of a company, aren't you?
Yeah, it is CEO of Sickle Cell Care Manchester, which is the charity in which I co-founder and also one who's actively involved in the organisation. So in terms of if somebody, wherever you are in the world, was interested to learn more about the condition, we've set up a website. I can furnish you that information, which is www.sicklecellcaremanchester.co.uk.
Thank you. Can you just repeat that again for anybody who missed that?
Yes, it's www.sickle, SICKLE, cell, care, Manchester, all one word, .co.uk.
All right.
And
So
if they go on that website,
this time.
yeah, if they go on that website, they can actually glean information. And something that you mentioned before in terms of trait. Now, let me underscore this with caution. Sickle cell trait, many people are told that having sickle cell trait, you only have to be concerned about when you go together and you're copulating to have children. The reality that if you look on our website and even look to America, where they are ahead in terms of their research and their understanding of the condition. You can actually have crisis with sickle cell trait. However, it's more so when somebody's at high-end athletics or strenuous activities. So you can have an issue that is sickle-induced. Well, it's an induced crisis because of exercise and overexertion. And also with a very key underscoring, there is a rare, an exceptionally rare type of cancer, but ignorance isn't bliss. So there is a rare type of cancer if you have sickle cell full-blown disease or sickle cell trait that you can be more susceptible, and it's a kidney cancer. And if people are interested to learn about that, if they Google Ricky Casey Trust, they can learn more about that particular information that I've just divulged. So Ricky Casey Trust, they can look into it because that trust was set up with a fireman who lived in Bolton in Manchester, and he had a rare form of cancer that nobody picked up on, and it was down to trait, and unfortunately he passed away. So just to say, and I must underscore, because I know many people might get alarmed and such forth, it's rare, but again, it's worthwhile knowing that there may be symptoms that sometimes are misdiagnosed, but if they know about the information properly and it can be screened for, then it could be a lifesaver.
Right. Thank you for that. Thanks for that. I hope you all took that in. And if you didn't, just replay on that, get this information. I'm not talking about, you say, golden nuggets. These are lifesavers. These are lifesavers for those around you, yourself as well, family, so please, take some board. Listen, Anthony, I know we were talking all the time, but I'm going to just jump back a little bit. I'm picking up from all what you said before. Now, you said after we're going to move on to the deeper side of also your spiritual life. You said to me that you went to different ministries, you said, and then you got called. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so...
And sorry, one more thing I'm going to say, is that the time that you felt you had confidence by then, or did you gain the confidence through your faith and your belief?
By confident, living with sickle cell and the challenges that I had with that, my confidence was really diminished in one sense. Being in school, being teased, not being understood, but it gave me a resilience in one sense. I didn't realize that resilience until later on in life. I didn't allow for it to crush me. I didn't allow for it to limit my capacity to excel and to make an imprint, a positive imprint in life. But I recognized that, being on the streets of Mosside and surrounding areas, that there had to be more to life than what I was seeing. And I couldn't exactly explain, because I was grown up in the church, and when I got to about 16, I thought I was on the starters orders for the Grand National. I ran into the world, and I wanted to catch up and do everything that I thought that I'd missed out on. And that was short-lived. That was short-lived. In one sense, when I look at the scheme of things, it was about 20 years in the world, as it were, living what I thought was life. Doing all the things that everyone else was doing, but I still found that there was a void. There was something that was missing, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I would put it down to this road to this Damascus experience, whereby all of a sudden it was an epiphany. No, it was a gradual move whereby I started to recognize that I wasn't here because, of my own making or my own doing. There was a purpose, and I believe everyone has a purpose. And I think part of the only way that you actually find that fulfillment of purpose is when you start to look at who created you, not who birthed you. Biologically, my father, my earthly father, he's gone on, he's left the world, he's passed away. I still fortunately have my mother at present. But you become your own man. And I'm now in the place as being a grandfather, and I look at the aspects of life. Why does that all make sense into the spiritual journey? It makes sense to recognize that as much as I can do, I must try and show my children, my family, friends around me, that there is more to what we think that life has to offer, and there's one that's greater than us. And God's speaking in nature. If you look around, you've traveled, and I'm sure going on a plane, many of your viewers or listeners going on the plane may have been like myself. When I've got on the plane and I've looked around, I was trying to put everyone in their seats as to where would bring balance to the plane. Because
That's interesting.
so I'm looking at the logistics and I'm saying to myself, okay. Then I look at this machine and I think to myself, this doesn't work in my head. That this machine is lifting off with so many people on it, traveling through the sky and landing safely. And it's flown with the force that takes it beyond gravity to a certain degree. It does not make sense. That in itself, when you put that in the equation, try to work that out, that in itself is just miraculous. Then when you're up in,
I know.
so, and I've been on the plane a few times and it never fails to amaze me. Then when I look from the plane at the sea and I see that the sea looks blue, but yet when I'm on the ground, that it looks a different color. And when I look at the sky, but when I'm up in the sky looks blue, but when I'm up there, I can't see any blue. I can just see the clouds. The grass being green, the trees that have set into place, the sea stopping at its shores. Who puts them things into control? So,
Right.
and that caused me to start to look at that journey. And in that journey, the pieces started to come together of a bigger picture from the jigsaw.
Yeah.
And I'm not complete. I'm not a complete picture, but I'm in process and it starts to make sense. But some things still don't make sense. As I said about the plane aspect, I can do the same thing about a ship and a cruise liner. You know, you put a piece of metal, go any lake and put a piece of metal on the surface and see what happens. It sinks. So you put thousands of people on a metal designed object and it floats and takes so many people across it. It just doesn't compete. So I'm saying just even the capacity of man's ability. Everything that you look around, if you look around your room, if you look around anywhere to look around, everything started from inside of the mind. It was a thought.
Yeah.
And I believe that we were all in the thought of God, and then we materialize in the sense that everything that was created has purpose. There's nothing around you that doesn't have a purpose. So I believe that I find fulfillment, even though at times I don't understand certain things, that my fulfillment is that I'm looking to connect with my Creator. And it's a daily journey because, again, I'm moving and processing in the life of journey. And some things that I've looked at 20 years ago, 10 years ago, what I thought was solid in my belief system, I recognized that I had to unravel and actually look at and ask the Lord to help me to understand my particular journey. And that has deepened my spiritual aspect in terms of knowing that there's a God that would care and consider, that allowing me, even though the medical professionals had said I wouldn't live beyond, that God has allowed me to be here. And I'm praying and trusting that my heart is to serve. And, you know, I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. And I'll be the first to tell you that. But I do believe that coming together and being one that's looking at joining our beliefs, joining our strength of trusting the Creator, that we can achieve great things.
I came to that. You know, well, as now metaphysical, and what you explained it about the unexplained, the airplane, you know, the lump of metals. But I didn't think about the boat one, actually, to be honest. But many times that I get up in the plane, like just come back just the other day for, as you know, travel, and coming back as well, it just seems, first while going and the takeoff and the surge, you are thinking about all these things. This is magnificent. But when it's coming back, I felt so used to it, as if I just got in a cab and I went down the road. There's a danger in there at the same time.
Yeah.
There is a danger in that, in taking it casually, because it's not, you know, it is part of the wonders. To even fathom in your head, to think of putting this together, that this could happen. It's really something. I didn't think about the boat one. The boat one I didn't think about. And so, I got into, through my father-in-law, who's out there now, actually, you might have heard of those shovel day. I got into gardening. And that I see from that perspective, and just planting a seed and then seeing after how it grows and it becomes planted, it sheds other little seeds that go in. And it's just, who thought of that? Thought of that, just to make the same. I enjoy that. I give God the glory for everything on that. Anthony, you know what? This has been very short as we spoke of them here, right? But it's been so fulfilling and so much information. I'm sure that people will like to, get in touch with you, have a word again as well. I mean, I'm thankful that and if we could have that together as a day. So listen, just give us the details where people can get in touch with you again and your organization as well.
Yeah, so the organization is called Sickle Cell Care Manchester. .co.uk. If you Google it, we come quite high in the rankings on Google's algorithms. And when you go onto the website, it has information on there that covers quite a lot aspects. We have we've had an advice hour that looking at filling out the PIP. PIP is the personal dependent payments for those that are living with sickle. We looked at information of people whilst they're in hospital rather than going to PALS, which is a patient aspect into the hospital, connected to hospitals. And looking at things like that. We cover looking at sickle cell, what is sickle cell, explained via words and also some little video clips. It covers quite an array, and it will also furnish some of the things that we're actually doing locally. And also, just bringing understanding on there. For example, something that we recently embarked upon, the food wheel. Is the food wheel conducive to helping individuals with sickle cell, particularly being European? So we looked at the food wheel in the foods that are coming from Africa and from the Caribbean. Are the foods we're eating helping or hindering sickle? Things like that we've looked at. You mentioned something before in terms of, how you met me. We found that women have this thing called brain fog through pregnancy, through menopause. And again, we found that there's a connectivity aspect with sickle cell that it's actually found to be a thing. So there's things that my wife says, you were there at a particular place. Look, there's a photograph and you sat there and you're thinking, no way, can I remember that? So again, these are certain things that we've looked at. So there's some of the things that are not necessarily on the beaten track in terms of aspect of sickle. What we're looking at, the aspect of mental health. When we mention that from our own community perspective, and that's a whole catalogue and dynamics in itself,
right?
We don't want to embrace that statement or that pigeon boxing, as it were, or pigeonholing. Anxiety and depression, that is mental health. There are many people that are living with sickle cell that when they go into hospital, their anxiety levels go up as to whether or not they're coming out because of the nature of the crisis. So you can't decouple the physical aspect of sickle to the mental aspect of sickle.
Right.
So there are things like that we're looking into. And good place for questions and people learning about themselves. And there is an aspect also, the transition of going from pediatric care to transitioning to adult care, where again, there is a massive chasm of disparity of understanding culture and being catered for as well. So there's a few areas that we're still working on. But our key thing is to what I want to do as the lead of the organization is to try and get us as much self-supported as possible away from grants and funds. So we're on a campaign to try and get 1,000 people to give £5 a month. For some people, I know that'll be a big ask. So we're not taking it for granted, but for some people, it's a cup of coffee, in one day. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we're able to challenge the systems independently, because sometimes when you're tied to their grants, they can pull the rug and mute your challenge to the system. So we want to move away from that as well. So that's That's some of our aims and ambitions in terms of going forward. And listeners can be part of that.
Right. Okay. So they'll contact you on the website that you
Yeah.
gave if they want to be part of that and donate £5 towards Sickle Cell. You heard it. Yeah. So let's gather together on this and do something. Okay. Let's all gather together and do something. We can actually sit here and just watch this and think, well, it's not me. It's not me. No, it's them. We still got. No, we're all part of it. Okay. So let's band together on this. Anthony, listen, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. But I've got one more question for you. We're going to go direct because I know you've got a busy schedule going on at the present moment. Cup of confidence. And I'm going to tie in with what you just said. Bit different this time around. Somebody suffering with sickle cell right now and feeling pretty low, might feel depressed about the situation or what, might not feel a way out or whatever. Where would they find confidence in that? What would you advise to someone?
Interesting question. There's a psychologist called Kofi Annan who he did a publication on CBT, cognitive behavior therapy.
Yeah.
And in his document, I believe we've got it on the website now. Oh, there's a link on our Facebook or one of the groups. I don't actually micromanage the particular areas, but it brought back to mind.
Okay.
He talked about prayer. He talked about meditation. And one thing I've recognized that even though I've got sickle cell, I remember many years ago, I embarked upon the Expert Patients Program. Now that program was designed in the community, but it got expunged into the NHS system. And what it was a group of individuals all had some type of medical challenge. And we all grouped together and we worked through this 8-week course. And I left from there empowered to believe that sometimes when you in the confines of your own environment, that when you look broader, and I'd even encourage somebody who is not sick or has not got sickle to do this, to go and visit a hospital on one occasion and just to go around the wards and see how fortunate that you're able to walk. Even though you may have sickle cell, you'll find that there's other conditions that you'll be grateful that you've not got. I'd also ask you to aspect of take every day with value. Every day you're going to have something to be grateful for, particularly being in this part of the world. We're not in a war-torn country where we've not got access to medical supplies, hospitals, even drinking water. We consider these things, and this is why I come back to the aspect to be grateful for, even though what you may see as nothing major, but it's like the man who was complaining about is having no shoes to wear. And it's a difference between him complaining and the man who having no foot to actually put on a shoe. There's a difference.
Yeah.
So I look at that. Not every day is rosy. Not every day is, as I'd like it to be. However, if I live on the day as I started today, in terms of I'm on the right side of the soil, there's hope. And I don't know what tomorrow may bring, but I'm hopeful and I'm grateful. So my thing is take every day with value, take from as much as possible, and try as you're going along. You'll be surprised that when you help others, even if it's an encouragement, even if it's a phone call, even if it's a text. I say that because I look at the bereavement aspect as well. And many people, when it crescendos to the funeral, everyone supports them. And afterwards, after they laid the loved one to rest, they disappear, it becomes quiet. But then phone calls, then visits, then texts, you'll be surprised how far they go. So I look at the cup. I've got a cup to be working with in the first place. It may not be half full, or it may not be half empty, but I've got something to be working with.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. Value, gratitude goes a long way. Gratitude for each day. Really appreciate those words. Anthony, thank you very much for spending time on Cup of Confidence. It's been a real pleasure. It's been a big insight. And let's see if we can gather you out there and see how we can pull together and make things happen. Okay?
Thank you so much, Chris. And I really take it as a privilege and an honor that you've, after all this time, prompting. It's not a coincidence, it's a God instance that we connected again. And I thank you for affording me this opportunity to speak with your viewers and to share a moment. And, I'm grateful and appreciative. And again, I just really give God thanks that we connected so many years ago, not knowing that this time would lead to where we are now. So, let's say, we don't know what the future holds, and long live what you're doing and continue to do what you're doing. And
Thank you.
I'm grateful and thankful.
Thank you. And you said a key point. We never know God's plan, what he has in store. So that goes for everyone. You just one little connection, one time you meet along the way, a little hello, a little passing. You just do not know the bigger plans. Yeah. So that's great. That with me. Yeah, I'm feeling good today. We've done this well. All right, dude. Well, I'm going to let you get off to your meeting. Thank you very much. And we're going to make things happen, okay?
Excellent.
God bless you. Bye-bye.